Hello, everyone. I'm Kamraun.
And I'm Billy. Welcome to the Horse Frog Podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors.
Today, we will be discussing Book 3, Chapter 14 of Memories of Ice, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 3 of our coverage of this chapter.
And this podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it's most definitely not a replacement to reading the books. Both Kamraun and I know that this series is the best fantasy story ever written, and we're approaching this from a purely fanboy point of view, and that we'll be providing no literary critique of this series, at least.
We'll be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that haven't read the books. We'll try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
A quick warning, today's episode contains descriptions of extreme violence and other topics not suitable for children.
Yeah. Some rough stuff today.
Yeah.
Our show is listener supported. If you'd like to support us, we'd really appreciate it. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you, and we really do mean that. So send any feedback or comments that you have to contact@horsefrogproductions.com.
All right, Chapter 14, Part 3. We pick up where we left off in the defense of Kapustan. 2 bells before dawn. To the north and to the west, the roar of battle was diminishing. Akovian's counterattacks had reclaimed the gates and walls there. The fight was out of the attackers on those sides, for the rest of this night at least. Bruchalion and Carnidus had returned from the thrall a bell earlier. Bruchalion had assembled the 600 recruits Akovian had been holding in reserve, along with 2 mains and 2 wings, and set off towards the Jelarkan concourse, where it was rumored over 1,000 Becklights had pushed their way in, threatening to overwhelm the inner defenses. The situation around the west gate was even more dire. 3 of Akovian's messengers had not returned after being sent that way. The west barracks was engulfed in a raging fire, revealing in lurid flashes the rubble that was the west gate itself. This breach, should it prove able to reach through to the west side of Jelarkan concourse, could see the fall of half the city. Akovian paced with frustration. He was out of reserve forces. For a while there, it looked as if the Kappenthal and Grey Sword detachments assigned to the west gate had simply ceased to exist, the wound gushing into a flood. Then, inexplicably, resolve had stiffened. The flood had encountered a human wall, and though it rose, it had yet to pour over. The fate of Kapustan lay with those defenders now, and Akovian could only watch as all hung in the balance. Carnidus was below, in the barracks compound, exhausting his Denul Warren, struggling against whatever sorcerous infection plagued it, yet still managing to effect healing of wounded Grey Swords. Something had happened in the thrall, was happening even now. The entire keep was glowing, a colorless penumbra. Akovian wanted to ask the Destriant about it, but the opportunity had yet to arise. Boots on the ladder, Akovian swung about. The messenger who emerged was horribly burned along one side of his face. His eye on that side was puckered, wrinkled, and dark as a raisin. That's really rough imagery right there. I don't love that at all.
Yeah, that's pretty tough, yeah.
Something about eye damage always really gets me.
Oh, you know, I used to be a really big gore hound. I think I've told you this. And there's one guy in particular, an Italian guy, Lucio Fulci, in all his movies there's always an eye wounding in there always, because everybody has that fear. We all have that fear of losing one of our eyes in a horrific manner. And it's reasonable fear. It's a very reasonable fear, dude. None of us love that idea too well. If we do, we've got a problem.
I can't remember. Did you ever watch Sons of Anarchy?
I did not. I've been meaning to. KP has mentioned wanting to see that with me.
They had one of their guys that was in prison basically throughout the whole show, and one of his eyes was damaged. There was always some stuff going on in the prison where there was like the threat of making him blind with other gangs and stuff like that. So that comes to mind. The eye stuff. Terrible.
Yeah. Scary stuff.
The messenger climbed clear of the ladder, and Akovian saw Carnidus behind him. Halfway out of the hatch, Carnidus said, "He insisted he give his report to you first, sir. I can do nothing for the eye, but the pain." Akovian snapped, "In a moment. Messenger, make your report." The young man gasped, "Apologies for taking so long." Akovian's eyes widened. He said, "You humble me, sir. It has been a bell and more since I sent you to the west gate." The messenger said, "The Panions had reached through to Tular Camp, Shield Anvil. Senar Camp had fallen, its inhabitants slaughtered. Everyone. Children. Sir, I'm sorry, but the horror remains with me." Akovian said, "Go on." The messenger said, "Jebar Tower was surrounded, its defenders besieged. Such was the situation upon my arrival, sir. Our soldiers were scattered, fighting in clumps, many of them surrounded. We were being cut down everywhere I looked." He paused, drew a ragged breath, then continued. Such was the situation upon my arrival. As I prepared to return to you with said news, I was absconded. Ikovian said, You were what? The messenger said, Apologies, sir. I can think of no other word. A foreigner appeared, with but half a score of Kappan followers, a militia of sorts, sir, and a Lestari sergeant. The man took charge of everyone, myself included. Shield anvil, I argued. Ikovian said, Clearly this man was persuasive. Resume your tale, sir. The messenger said, The foreigner had his own soldiers break down the door into Tular camp. He demanded that its inhabitants come out and fight for their children. Ikovian asked, And he convinced them? The messenger said, Sir, he held in his arms what was left of a child from Senar camp. The enemy, sir, the Panions. Someone had begun to eat that child. Carnidus moved up behind the young man, hands settling on his shoulders. Ikovian said, He convinced them. The messenger nodded and said, The foreigner. He then took what was left of the child's tunic, and has made of it a standard. I saw it myself, sir. I ceased arguing then. I'm sorry. Ikovian said, I understand you, sir. Sounds like Gruntle and his followers succeeded in marshaling the forces at the West Gate. It's amazing the difference one person can make. If Gruntle hadn't compelled those people to rise to the occasion by summoning their courage and stretching beyond what they thought they were capable of, the West Gate would have most certainly fallen by now.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly with everything you just said there. And we start getting into this bit here in this siege where it starts getting on, and this is where it starts reaching super core memory. This is core memory, but I have a question. The dead child, is it really a dead child? Is there one?
I think so.
Okay. I almost want to think it was like not, but it was like he just kind of ran with it or something. I don't know what it was. I don't know why I think that.
Well, I don't know how you'd get part of a kid that's partially eaten.
Well, I mean, all you got to do is get some gristly meat, get a chicken for goodness sake, and
But
say,
it had a
look,
shirt.
they boiled this kid alive. Throw it.
How far you want to go with this, Billy?
I can get you a shirt. I can get you a shirt with toenail. I can get you a toenail. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh.
I think it's a real kid at this point in time.
I think it is too, but I don't know why I was.
But now you're casting doubt on that. I know Gruntle is a scrappy fellow, you know.
Thank you. Yes. Hey, but he's got it doesn't matter. It's like, for some reason, it's almost the reason. What my thinking is the fact that it's like, okay, like I got to do something. Mm-hmm. It's I got to do something here. It's like they ate this child, man. It's like it just reaches down and grabs someone's dinner. It's like shoving it in their face. Like it's, I don't know, and just to get them all riled up,
It's possible it's one of the kids that Corball Broach was trying to get a hold of.
That's true.
I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't really necessarily want to know.
Yeah. If he did go down that route, I would think that that's where he'd get the child from.
Okay.
Maybe through Buke.
We'll leave it at
but
that.
I don't know, man. Given what happens in the rest of the chapter, I don't think Buke would have participated in something like that.
Yes, I agree.
And what an inspirational image that is. The standard being made of the child's tunic. I just really don't understand where this is coming from Gruntle. Given everything we saw throughout the beginning of the book, it's such a stark contrast. It's like a switch flipped.
Yeah. It's kind of one of these things that we talked about. I think I've already hinted at. I know I talked about this in the last week or the week before when we're getting ready for this. About at the beginning of the book when we first meet Gruntle, lots of respect is given him, and we've not seen necessarily what has earned him that, but apparently the respect is apparently well earned because of what's going on here and what he's able to marshal. Apparently he functions good in an emergency. Some folks are just like that, and this is your guy. When it hits the fan, this is your man. When he's not hitting the fan, he's not your man. He's going to be drunk. But when things are going on, he's your guy.
Yeah, I could see that. Some people thrive in a chaotic situation.
Yeah.
And it's not something that he wants to be in. But I guess if driven to the point where he has to act, maybe that's what it takes. I got to make a note here real quick. When it hits the fan, this is your man. Is that what you said?
Mm. Yes.
Okay, that's going on the t-shirt list idea. And it's going to have Gruntle.
There we go. It's the fan, this is your man. Because it is. He is your man.
Dude, I have a bunch of ideas that I've been writing down because I'm going to start doing this.
Okay, awesome.
We'll see how this
More
goes.
frog merch. Yes,
Yeah.
we have some merch.
The messenger said, there was no shortage of weapons. The Tular Kapenthal armed themselves. 500 came out, men and women. The foreigner had sent out his own followers, and they began returning. With them, surviving bands of Kapenthal soldiery, a few Gidrath, Coralessian and Grey Swords, sir. The Trimaster had been killed, you see. Ikovian cut in. The foreigner rallied them. Then what? The messenger said, we marched to the relief of Jabbar Tower, sir. Shield anvil. Behind that horrible banner, we delivered slaughter. Ikovian asked, the condition of the tower? The messenger said, ruined, sir, alas. There were but 20 survivors among the Kapenthal defending it. They are now with the foreigner. I returned to my responsibilities then, sir, and was given leave to report to you.
All of these other soldiery, I keep forgetting who's who. The Kapenthal, the Gidrath, the Coralessians, the Grey Swords. I'm like, dude, are these our guys? Yeah, I forget these are our people. But there's a lot of different, disparate military bands in this group, isn't there?
Yeah, so the Gidrath, that's the people in the thrall, all those wrath, this and that. That's their forces, right? The masked council. Okay. And then the Grey Swords, we know who they are.
Yes.
Kapenthal, I think that must be Jelarkan's forces.
Yeah, I guess, the Capen people, so good call there.
Yeah, and then the Coralessian, I took that as forces from Coral.
Oh, good call, okay.
But Coral is in the Panyan Daman, so I don't know if that tracks, but I can't think of where else they'd be from, you know what I mean? Maybe deserters from Coral, I don't know.
Yeah, and we lost our vaunted Trimaster.
Uh-huh.
The Trimaster had been killed.
Well, there's a couple of them. Because
that's true.
I think there's
Is there 3 of them?
I think.
I'm sorry.
Oh my God, Billy, what is 9?
Whoa. Is it Septahepta Octa Nana? It's Nana.
Nanuple.
The Nano Master.
Is that how you say that? Because it's octuple, non-nuple.
Right.
Would he be the non-master?
The non-tuple.
Because if there's a master over 3 trimasters, is that the non-master?
Right. I see where your math is coming from, and the math tracks, sir. And so,
okay.
I think,
or would it, or it would it be the trimaster?
Intriguing. The Trimaster is great. I'm sorry. I don't know why I love the Trimaster.
Yeah. I prefer that to the non-master, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the non-tuple master, that makes sense. Yeah, the Trimaster is fantastic, dude.
All right. So would Ikovian be the Trimaster? I think so.
If there are, in fact, if there is just the Trimaster over the 3 Trimasters, then yes.
Okay. Honorary title for Ikovian.
Okay, the Trimaster. Make it so.
Right.
Clear this with Steven. Have our folks call his, and we'll see if he's down with this.
All right, so the messenger said that he was given leave to report to Ikovian. Ikovian said, generous of this stranger. What was the disposition of this militia at that time? The messenger said, they were about to sortie through the rubble of West Gate, sir. Ikovian said, what? The messenger said a Becklite company was coming up to reinforce the attackers inside the city, but those attackers were all dead. The foreigner planned on surprising them with that fact. Ikovian said, Twin Tusks, who is this man? The messenger said, I know not his name, sir. He wields 2 cutlasses. Fights like a boar, sir, with those 2 cutlasses. Ikovian stared at the young man for a long moment, seeing the pain diminishing as the destriant continued gripping his shoulders, seeing the blisters shrink, the welt fading, new skin closing around the ruined eye. Ikovian swung about in a clank of armor, faced west. The fire of the west barracks reached its crimson light only so far. Beyond, darkness ruled. He shifted his attention to the Jelarkan concourse. No further breaches were evident as far as he could determine. Bruchalion had matters well in hand, as Ikovian knew would be the case. Carnidus murmured, less than a bell before dawn. Shield anvil, the city holds. Ikovian nodded. More boots on the ladder. They all turned as another messenger arrived. The new messenger said, Shield anvil, from the 3rd sortie to East Watch redoubt. The surviving Gidrath have been recovered, sir. Movement to the southeast was discerned. The Trimaster sent a scout. Shield anvil, the Tenniscauri are on the move. Wow, that suicide mission to recover the soldiers in the redoubt succeeded.
Yeah.
That must have been something to extend that far beyond the walls and recover them.
Dude, I am just blown away by that fact. I'd written those folks off, and to think that they went out there and got them, it's like, wow, I'm really blown away. I would have loved to have seen that. That's a story in and of itself, isn't it?
That's what I was about to say, is that's one of those things that a movie is made after, inspired by real events. And they make a whole movie about something like that.
Yes,
the harrowing journey through the battlefield.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Ikovian nodded and thought, they will arrive with the dawn. 300,000, maybe more. He said, Destriant, open the tunnels. Begin with the inner camps, sir. Every citizen below. Take charge of the barracks, mains and wings, and whoever else you come across to effect swift directions and control of the entranceways.
Is this the first number we've had listed of the tennis gallery? 300,000?
That have fully collected here, yes.
Okay. You and I had made some guesses, and I said, I was thinking, like, these guys got to be in the million, like at least $1 million. And, I mean, 300,000 is horrific, especially because I know that that's way more than the defending forces exist. Heck, it's probably more than the population of that city, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah.
And the defending forces. So that, and then they have an army on top of that to back it up. That's chilling.
For some reason, I had a number of like 250,000 in my head for the original tennis gallery that came, and then a Naster, I thought it was around 100K that he brought additional.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. I don't know why those numbers are sticking out to me. They might have mentioned them.
Okay, cool. Wow, that's very significant. I like finally having some real numbers, though. Wow.
What's impressive is Ikovian's ability to estimate the size of that.
Yes.
He's a really impressive individual. His skill set.
Yes, he is. Yeah, I'm really impressed with him so far.
Bruchalion and Carnidus, I haven't seen anything that's really exemplary from either of them yet.
Yeah.
Carnidus is just like a healer that I've seen so far. And then Bruchalion, we haven't seen what he's capable of yet. He's mostly been mired in tactical discussions. And
is he the one that wants to be the Wrath guy?
No, that was Carnidus.
Okay.
Carnidus's lined face twisted into a wry smile. He said, Shield Anvil, it is my duty to remind you that the Mass Council has yet to approve the construction of said tunnels. Ikovian nodded again and said, Fortunately for the people of Kapustan, we proceeded without awaiting that approval. I wonder if they would have tried to stop them, they being the Masked Council, if they would try and stop the Grey Swords from building these tunnels with a bunch of red tape and BS.
Oh, dude. Absolutely. Absolutely. I have no reason to doubt that at all because of everything we've seen from those idiots in the council as this army's outside waiting at the walls. They're still squabbling. Mm-hmm. It's like, guys, y'all aren't going to have nothing to squabble over. They're going to still be in here fighting over things and forms and over the minutes of the last meeting when the enemy breaks down the gates, kind of people.
Yeah. There's some stuff that comes later in the chapter here about taxes that reminds me of just how bad these guys are. I don't know if they're directly involved in taxation or if they're more of a different branch of the government here, but I would think that with all the burial chambers around and all of the other buildings and stuff, they would have been like, no, we can't dig there. There's historical reasons, or nah, this merchant doesn't want people digging. You don't have the right permits to dig here and all that stuff, Yeah,
these guys.
Ikovian frowned, then said, It seems the Mass Council has found its own means of self-defense. Carnidus said, Not them, sir. Hitan and Kafal, and a new priest, indeed, the very merchant whom you rescued out on the plain. Ikovian slowly blinked. He asked, Did he not have a caravan guard, a large man with a pair of cutlasses belted to his hips? He thought cutlasses? More like Fëanor's own tusks. Carnidus hissed and said, I believe you are right, sir. In fact, only yesterday I spared a moment to heal him. Ikovian asked, He was wounded? Carnidus said, Hung over, Shield Anvil. Very. I hadn't considered how much of a favor this was until now. We know how difficult it is for anyone to sorcerously heal someone due to the infection in the Warrens at this point in time. Mm-hmm. To take the time and effort to ease Gruntel's hangover was an incredible gift by Carnidus.
Oh, yeah. Also, the fact that healer was healing that fellow with the messed up eye while talking to him a minute ago. Mm-hmm. Not even showing any signs of distress while we know he has to be suffering distress using his warrant because of what's been said.
I was wondering about that. Specifically, I think he's using the same warrant as Mallet And when Mallet tried to heal Trotz, I mean, it was rough.
Yeah.
He was literally being ripped apart.
Yeah, it started to rupture his skin, yeah.
For Carnidus to not be impacted externally, I wonder if this has something to do with him being a Destriant, and maybe he is really that much more powerful than Mallet.
That could be, and maybe that is the point of these long, because I forgot what chapter mentioned the long extinct titles being brought back into play, and you and I don't even know what that means. I'm assuming that has to have something to do with his power levels. I'm assuming, or giving him more maybe pure access or more resistance against that taint.
Yeah, I wonder, because he's using Denul just like Mallet, but the Destriant thing, that's a connection to Fener.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it gives him another avenue of accessing his Warren or what's going on there.
Yeah, me neither. Just curious.
Akovian said, I see. Carry on, sir. And this was in relation to the hangover healing that Carnidus mentioned. Akovian looked to his two messengers and said, word must be sent to the mortal sword and to this foreigner. We go to Gruntle. The Becklight's wicker shield exploded from the man's arm to Gruntle's backhand swing. The notched, gore-smeared cutlass in Gruntle's other hand chopped straight down, through helm, then skull. Brain and blood sprayed down over his gauntlet. The Becklight fell to one side, limbs jerking. Gruntle spun, whipping the ragged mess from his blade. A dozen paces behind him, looming above the feral ranks of his followers, was the child's standard, a torn, brightly dyed yellow tunic now splashed with a red that was drying to deep magenta. The Becklight Company had been crushed. Gruntle's victim had been the last. The caravan captain and his militia were 40 paces outside what was left of the west gate, on the wide main avenue of what had been a shanty town. The structures were gone, their wooden walls and slate roofs dismantled and taken away. Patches of stained earthen floors and the scatter of broken pottery were all that remained. 200 paces further west ran the pickets of the besiegers, swarming in the dawn's growing light. Gruntle could see 6,000 Bedeklites marshaling along its edge, flanked by companies of Erdomen and Betrulid light cavalry. Beyond them, a vast veil of dust was rising, lit gold by the slanting sun. What a scene this would be! Having Gruntle standing there panting after the battle, catching his breath, with the standard in the background in the morning light, and the enemy forces arrayed ahead of him, preparing to renew their assault.
This would truly be amazing, and this description of him just using his sheer strength to slice through a helm, down through the helm into the head. You're like, dude, what is going on with that fella? I mean, that's great. But yeah, this whole scene, oh my word. I mean, you and I have watched enough war movies and stuff, and the fantasy war movies and stuff like this. We have so much to pull from in my brain that you can see a ton of images with this. There's just so many that would just stand out with this here.
To your point about the sword going through the helmet, I do wonder at his use of cutlasses. That's not a weapon that we've heard of anybody else using in this series, really. No. They mostly use long swords or bastard swords or hand-and-a-half swords or something along those lines. Kalam will use a long knife, but cutlasses are very forward-heavy, I believe. So, yes, he's very strong, but I think the choice of weapon plays a role in what he's doing.
Like it's more chopping-type weapon as opposed to stabbing-type weapon?
Yes, I believe so. Like a slashing-type weapon.
Okay.
Another thing that stuck out to me reading through this last passage was the mention that the shantytown had been completely removed by the attacking forces. And I had never really thought of that before. When you're sieging a city with an army, you need access to the walls and to the gates to get in. The shantytown would force them to channel, which would not be good, because then they'd be susceptible to concentrated fire in those areas, right? So you'd want to be able to spread out more. So I never put much thought into the prep work necessary to get up to the city.
Right. When you put it like that, I had neither. So it's kind of wow. That would be a lot of work to get you right up on it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. The lieutenant had dropped to one knee beside Gruntle, struggling to regain control of his breathing. He said, Time's come to withdraw, sir." Scowling, Gruntle swung to survey his militia. He thought, 50, 60 still standing. What did I start with last night? About the same. Is that right? Gods, can that be right? He asked, where are our sergeants? The lieutenant said, they're there, most of them anyway. You want me to call them forward, sir? Gruntle thought, no. Yes, I want to see their faces. I can't remember their faces. He said, have them assemble the squads. The lieutenant said, sir, if the cavalry rushes us. Gruntle said, they won't. They're masking. The lieutenant asked, masking what? Gruntle said, Teniskauri. Why throw more veteran soldiers at us only to see them killed? Those bastards need a rest in any case. No, it's time for the starving horde. The lieutenant whispered, Beru Fend. Gruntle said, don't worry, they die easy. The lieutenant said, we need to rest. We're sliced to pieces, sir. I'm too old for a suicide stand. Gruntle said, then what in Hood's name are you doing in Kapustan? Never mind. Let's see the squads. I want armor stripped from these bodies, leathers only, and helms and gauntlets. I want my 60 to look like soldiers. The lieutenant began to say, sir. Gruntle cut in. Then we withdraw. Understood? Best be quick about it, too. Gruntle has a good point there. Unfortunately, there is no time for rest.
Yes.
Once they stop, they won't get back up. Your joints are going to seize up. You're going to just fail to exhaustion. There's no stopping this train.
That's right.
You got to keep going. Got to keep moving.
I agree. Got to keep pushing through it, man.
There aren't enough people to rotate out in defense. You're basically fighting for your life until you're dead or it's done.
That's exactly right.
Gruntle led his battered company back towards Kapustan. There was activity amidst the ruin of Westgate. The plain gray cloaks of the Gray Swords dominated the crowd, though others, masons and ragtag crews of laborers, were present as well. The frenzied activity slowed as heads turned. Conversations fell away. Gruntle's scowl deepened. He hated undue attention. He thought, what are we, ghosts? Eyes were pulled to the child's standard. A figure strode forward to meet them, an officer of the mercenaries. The woman gave a grave nod and said, welcome back. We've got some weaponsmiths set up outside Tular camp. I imagine your tusks need sharpening. Gruntle corrected her. Cutlasses. She said, as you say, sir. The shield anvil. No, we all would know your name. But Gruntle had already stepped past her. He said, sharpeners. Good idea. Lieutenant, you think we all need to get our tusks sharpened? The Gray Swords officer spun round and said, sir, the reference is not to be taken lightly. He continued on. Over his shoulder, he said, fine, let's call them tiger claws, why don't we? Looks to me you've got a gate to rebuild. Best get to it, lass. Them Teniskauri want breakfast, and we're it. He heard her hiss in what might have been angry frustration. Moments later, the workers resumed their efforts. The weaponsmiths had set up their grindstone wheels in the street. Beyond them, in the direction of the Jelarkan concourse, the sound of battle continued. Gruntle waved his soldiers forward. He said, line up, all of you. I want those blades so sharp you can shave with them. The lieutenant snorted, then said, most of your troops women, sir. Gruntle said, whatever. This is another example of how Erikson so masterfully incorporates the diversity of humanity into his writings. None of it feels forced or serving anything outside of writing the world in a way that represents the breadth of humanity.
Yeah, I agree. It's just very natural. Like you said, it's just
Exactly.
a very natural thing to have it pointed out. There's nothing pointed out unnaturally. It's like, no, this just happened. Most of those dudes are not dudes. Oh, okay. Whatever.
I like the way the guy snorts and he's like, most are women, sir.
Yeah. 5, sir. It's 3, sir. Sorry.
A rider was driving his horse hard down the street. He reined in with a clatter of hooves, dismounted, and paused to adjust his armored gauntlets before striding to Gruntle. The man asked, are you Caruli's caravan captain? His face hidden behind a full-visored helm. Gruntle said, was. What do you want, mercenary? The man said, compliments from the shield anvil, sir. The Teniskauri are massing. Gruntle said, I know. The man said, it is the shield anvil's belief that their main assault will be from the east, for it is there that the first child of the Dead Seed has assembled his vanguard. And that surprised me, that Anastar and his company have made it this far. And it makes me wonder the gap in time since he parted company with Talk. They had to clean out coral to feed the Teniskauri, if you recall.
Yeah.
Then travel via barge to get here.
Yeah, because that was the last I remember was seeing him, was them getting ready for the barges to come here. And I'm like you, I'd like to see this laid out in some kind of time span. Where is this? Unless coral is just particularly really close to Kapustan here. I don't know if it's real close or not. So.
And also, how long do you think it would take them to eat coral? How long would it take for the buffet to run out of food?
Was this a go meal, or was this were we dining in?
I don't know, man. That's a lot of pots to fill.
I think they dine in until they're done, is my assumption. So
yeah. On
the quick side, it would still take you at least a week to get everyone fed, right? Quick side.
Yeah, probably.
I got no idea, dude. Obviously, some time has elapsed.
I was thinking it might be a couple weeks.
Not too long, but yeah, that's probably about right. You're probably about right.
Gruntle said, fine, what of it? The messenger was silent for a moment, then he continued, sir, Kapustan's citizens are being removed. Gruntle asked, removed where? The man said, "The Grey Swords have constructed tunnels beneath the city, sir. Below are amassed sufficient supplies to support 20,000 citizens." Gruntle asked, "For how long?" The man said, 2 weeks, perhaps 3. The tunnels are extensive. In many cases, old empty barrows were opened as well as storage repositories. There were more of those than anyone had anticipated. The entranceways are all well hidden and defensible. Gruntle thought 2 weeks. Pointless. He said, "Well, that takes care of the non-combatants. What about us fighters?" The messenger's eyes grew veiled between the black iron bars of the visor. He said, "We fight. Street by street, building by building, room by room, sir. The shield anvil inquires of you, which section of the city do you wish to assume? And is there anything you require? Arrows, food." Gruntle said, "We've no archers, but food and watered wine, aye." "Which section?" Gruntle surveyed his troop, then said, "More like which building?" "There's a tenement just off Old Daru Street, the one with the black stone foundations. We'll start at Northgate, then fall back to there." The man said, "Very good. Supplies will be delivered to that tenement house, sir." Gruntle said, "Oh, there's a woman in one of the rooms on the upper floor. If your evacuation of citizens involved a house-by-house search..." The man said, "The evacuation was voluntary, sir." Gruntle said, "She wouldn't have agreed to it." The man said, "Then she remains where she is." Gruntle nodded. The lieutenant came to Gruntle's side and said, "Your cutlasses. Time to hone your tiger claws, sir." Gruntle said, "Aye," turning away. Gruntle did not notice the messenger's head jerk back at the Listari lieutenant's words. Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm. A little jealousy there.
Is it jealousy or is it shock?
Probably shock, I'm guessing, because these people are they take this stuff pretty seriously. Mm-hmm. And for him to say that, and it's like, for him to say it to somebody else and it catches on, the tiger, and they're obviously bored. It's like it's hurt his feelings a little bit almost. I'm not sure if it's shock, like, what? I don't know if it's shock or it could be outrage or both. Shock and outrage.
Let's come back to it in a couple of paragraphs here.
Okay.
Through the dark cage of his visor, Ikovian studied Gruntle, who now strode towards a swordsmith, the short-legged Listari trailing a step behind. The blood-stained cutlasses were out, the wide, notched, tip-heavy blades the color of smoky flames. He had come to meet this man for himself, to take his fullest measure and fashion a face to accompany the man's extraordinary talents. Ikovian already regretted the decision. He muttered a soft, lengthy curse at his own impetuosity. He thought, "Fights like a boar? Gods no. This man is a big, plains-hunting cat. He has bulk, aye, but it passes unnoticed behind a deadly grace. Feigner save us all. The Tiger of Summer's ghost walks in this man's shadow." Returning to his horse, Ikovian drew himself up into the saddle. He gathered the reins. Swinging his mount round, he tilted his head back and stared at the morning sun. He thought, "The truth of this has burst like fire in my heart. On this, our last day, I have met this unnamed man, this servant of Treach, the Tiger of Summer. Treach ascending. And Feigner, the brutal boar whose savage cunning rides my soul, what of my lord? Feigner, descending. On this, our last day." A susurrating roar rose in the distance from all sides. The Teniscari were on the move. Ikovian rasped, "Twin tusks guard us," driving his heels into the horse's flanks. The animal surged forward, sparks raining as its hooves struck the cobbles. So that's why I'm saying shock, because I think this truly impacted him, given how much he sacrificed to serve Feigner. And to feel like his god is on his way down must be a severe blow to him.
Yeah, and I hate to just keep bringing this up, but in reference to Deadhouse Gates, was this leading up to the fall of Feigner? Is he sensing something here?
I really don't think the two are connected in that way.
Okay.
Because that seemed like such an abrupt action in Deadhouse Gates that ripped him into the mortal realm that I don't see how it could have in any way been connected to this.
That's true.
Now, there was probably some other stuff going on already. Maybe Feigner his power was already waning and he's in a weakened state as is, and maybe that's when Felicin pushed the stump that was corrupted of Hebric's arm into the seal of or the sigil of Feigner that's tattooed on him. Maybe that's what caused Feigner to be weak enough to be ripped into the mortal realm.
Yeah.
Now, I could be wrong. I'm not sure what's giving him the idea that Feigner is descending and Treach is rising. Maybe it's the fact that they're both vying for the same position, and it's very clear that Treach is gaining power. So maybe there's not enough to go around. One has to go down when the other one goes up.
That could be, because they were spotting in the council, they were noticing the Treach's, a Wrath, was it Wrath Treach or Wrath Trake, whatever they called it?
Wrath Trake, yeah.
Talking about they noticed that he was on the rise, And something was said about that then, I believe. So for someone that's lost, he seems to be kind of basically like in a good mood over all this. I think it was something in the council stuff earlier on.
He seemed chipper.
Chipper, thank you.
He's like, "Hey, pals, how's it going?"
Yeah.
You know,
Hey,
like
guys.
he's part of the
Hey,
club
buddy.
now or something.
Yeah. Hey, buddy.
Ain't your buddy, pal.
Ain't your pal, guy.
Gray-faced with exhaustion, Buke made his way towards the necromancer's estate. And this reminded me of something. When I was editing the episode a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned Peter Stormare. I never realized it, but that's who Bauchelain looks like in my head.
Okay.
He would be my casting choice for him. He always has the long, slicked back hair, and his face definitely matches the description that Erikson has for Bauchelain.
I could see that. I could totally see that. Brendan's a tall, commanding presence anyhow. Stormare's a pretty big, or at least in my mind, he's a pretty big fella. They always play him kind of intimidating.
He's probably about as tall as you.
That's kind of what I was thinking. And what's funny, did you ever see American Gods?
No, I never watched it.
The idea is that Odin is trying to put together a new pantheon out of some of the new stuff coming up out of the Americas and everywhere else. But he deals with some older gods, too, and some that are not Western. And Stormare plays a Russian. I'm not sure what deity he was, but I think it's funny that you mentioned that because he would be, I think Stormare would definitely need to be in this Malazan universe for sure. There's a place for him here.
He was actually Lucifer in the Keanu Reeves Constantine.
Yeah, that's right. He was.
Yeah, he was
That's
good
right.
in that role.
That's right.
He's good in everything.
Yeah, he was.
That I've seen him in.
He's great, dude. He's fantastic. Dude. I've seen him be a good guy sometimes, and he's real funny, and he's real nice and likable. He's also real scary. That's why he's that good. He just does it all so well.
Yeah, he does the comedy stuff pretty good, too, when he does it.
Yeah.
I was watching Armageddon with the kids a couple months ago, and he's the Russian.
Oh, that's right.
Have you ever seen that?
I have seen bits and pieces of it.
He's pretty funny in that.
I love that man, dude. I always think, of course, we mentioned Unguent earlier. He's our Unguent man. Unguent.
Well, when you mentioned the
from
toe.
Yes.
I mean, that's also adjacent, right? Because that's from the Big Lebowski.
Yes. It's very adjacent. Very Peter Stormare adjacent, yes.
Yeah. The estate was a large edifice, commanding a long, low hill that looked too regular to be natural, surrounded by a high wall with mock guard towers at the corners. A grand entrance was set back from the street with a ramped approach. The gate was a miniature version of the thralls, vertically raised and lowered by countersunk center-hold millstones. A fireball had struck the gate, blasting it into ruin. The flames had raged for a time, blackening the stone frame and cracking it, but somehow the structure remained upright. As Buke limped his way up the ramp towards it, he was startled by the sudden exit of a tall, gaunt, black-robed man. Stumbling, half-hopping like a huge ebon-winged vulture, the man spun round to glare at Buke. His face twisted, and he shouted, "I am second only to Wrath Shadowthrone himself. Do you not know me? Do they not know me? I am Marble, also known as the Malefic, feared among all the cowering citizens of Kapustan, a sorcerer of powers unimagined. Yet they..." He sputtered with fury, then continued, "A boot to the backside, no less. I will have my revenge, this I swear." Man, are all of Shadowthrone's servants insane?
Just the ones we've met, Even Quick Ben is a little off because we know he's an ex-priest of Shadow, so he maybe not squirrely enough to stay with that lot. But yeah, I'm thinking it just takes its toll on you at some point. It just creeps up in you. How long before you can withstand the titters? The mad titters.
Yeah.
I love the guy's rants. I'm Marble. Also, these guys walk, I can just see the door slamming open. It's like, bam. It's like, don't they know who I am?
The Malefic.
The Malefic. Not malefic enough, sir.
How do you get a name like that? You think that's self-appointed?
It's self-appointed, dude.
Calls
It's got to be
himself
self-appointed. It's got to be self-appointed. It's got to be, dude.
Buke said, "Ill-advised, priest. My employers." Marble said, "Are arrogant scum." Buke said, "That may be, but they're not ones to irritate, sir." Marble said, "Irritate? When my master hears of this insult delivered to his most valued servant, then shall the shadows flow." With a final snarl, the priest stamped down the walkway, black robes skirling dramatically in his wake. Buke paused for a long moment, watching until the man disappeared around a corner. The sound of fighting was on all sides, but getting no closer. Hours earlier, in the deep of the night when Buke had been helping people from the camps and from Daru District's tenements make their way to the Grey Sword's places of mustering, from which they would be led to the hidden tunnel entrances, the Panions had reached all the way to the street Buke had just walked. Somehow, Kapustan's motley collection of defenders had managed to drive them back. Bodies from both sides littered Killsban Way. Buke pushed himself into motion once more, passing beneath the scorched lintel of the entrance with a firm conviction that he would never again leave Bauchelain and Corval Broach's estate. Even as his steps slowed to a sudden surge of self-preservation, he saw it was too late. Bauchelain stood in the courtyard. He said, "Ah, my erstwhile employee, we'd wondered where you'd gone." Buke ducked his head, then said, "My apologies, sir. I delivered the tax exemption writ to the Daru civic authorities as requested." Bauchelain said, "Excellent. And was our argument well received?" Buke winced and said, "The event of siege, alas, offers no relief from property taxes, master. The monies are due. Fortunately, with the evacuation, there is no one at Daru House to await their arrival. Those tax collectors will be waiting on the other side of the gate after death, I bet. There is no escape."
No escape. I think it's quite interesting that the, was it the Greeks? Who was it that put the pennies on the eyes?
Yeah, Charon.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. It's like, is that a tax in a weird way? It's like, you need this
toll,
money to
my
get...
understanding, but I guess a toll and a tax, I mean...
Yeah, what's the difference? So it's like, who's collecting the money? What do they do with the money?
That's a good question.
They collect it.
I wonder what he does with it.
Interesting.
I have to look that up. Bauchelain said, "Yes, the evacuation. Tunnels. Very clever. We declined the offer, of course." Buke said, "Of course," but could no longer hold his gaze on the cobbles before him, and found his head turning, lifting slightly to take in the half-score Erdoman bodies lying bloodless, faces mottled black beneath their visors on all sides. Bauchelain murmured, "A precipitous rush of these misguided soldiers. Corval was delighted, and makes preparations to recruit them." Buke asked, "Recruit them, master?" "Oh, yes, sir, recruit them." Bauchelain cocked his head, then said, "Odd. Dear Emancipor Reese uttered those very words, in an identical tone, not half a bell ago." Buke said, "Indeed, master." The two regarded each other for a brief span, then Bauchelain stroked his beard and turned away. He said, "The Tenniscauri are coming, did you know? Among them, children of the dead seed. Extraordinary, these children. A dying man's seed. It's said that the eldest among them now commands the entire peasant horde. I look forward to meeting him." Buke said, "Master? Bauchelain smiled. He said, "Corval is most eager to conduct a thorough examination of this child named Anaster. What flavor is his biology? Even I wonder at this." The fallen Erdoman lurched, twitched as one, hands clawing towards dropped weapons, helmed heads lifting. Buke stared in horror. Bauchelain said, "Ah, you now have guards to command, Buke. I suggest you have them position themselves at the entrance, and perhaps one to each of the 4 corner towers. Tireless defenders. The best kind, yes?" That's horrific, yet effective. Not only are they tireless, but they'll also terrify the enemy. Imagine seeing your comrades rise against you in the service of the enemy. That would be really tough to handle.
Yeah, that would be unsettling, to say the least.
Quite demoralizing.
Yes. There's a lot to these guys that, the Bauchel and the Corval. There's a lot of real nastiness on both sides. And this is what's funny. These guys are just kind of free agents, Bauchel and the Corval Broach. But they sure do nasty things. I don't want to know what they do, but what it's hinted at is always real nasty.
Emancipor Reese, clutching his mangy cat tight against his chest, stumbled out from the main house. Bauchelain and Buke watched as the old man rushed towards one of the now standing Erdomen. Reese came up to the hulking warrior, reached out and tugged frantically at the undead's chain collar and the jerkin beneath it. The old man's hand reached down beneath both layers. Down, down. Reese started gibbering. He pulled his hand clear, staggered back. He stammered, but... His lined, pebbled face swung to Bauchelain. He said, That man, Corval, he said, I saw... He has their hearts. He's sewn them together. A bloody, throbbing mass on the kitchen table. But he spun and thumped the Erdoman on the chest and shouted, "No wound!" The human nuggy golem in the flesh, as it were. I really wonder what Corval Broach gets out of making these things.
I know it. I believe that these two have the least talked about magic in the series. Everything that is talked about them is always just kind of hinted very lightly around the edges. And I would like to know more, just because I'm also kind of morbidly curious. But
so I think in this book, you're right. They have their own short stories, and you probably get a little bit more of that in those because they're the main characters.
Yeah, I've bought them. I haven't read those yet, so I need to give them a shot. I'm sure they're great fun.
Yeah, they're good.
Okay.
Boschelane raised one thin eyebrow and said, "Ah, well, with you and friend Buke here interfering with Corball Broach's normal nightly activities, my colleague was forced to modify his habits, his modus operandi, if you will. Now, you see, my friends, he has no need to leave his room in order to satisfy his needs of acquisition. Nonetheless, it should be said, please desist in your misguided efforts." Boschelane's flat gray eyes fixed on Buke. He said, "And as for the priest Caruli's peculiar sorcery now residing within you, unveil it not, dear servant. We dislike company when in our soul-taken forms." Buke's legs came close to giving out beneath him. Boschelane murmured, "Emancipor, do lend your shoulder to our guard." Reese stepped close. His eyes were so wide that Buke could see white all around them. Sweat beaded his wrinkled face. He hissed, "I told you it was madness. What did Caruli do to you? Damn you, Buke." Buke growled, "Shut up, Mancy. You knew they were soul-taken, yet you said nothing. But Caruli knew as well." I can't believe these guys are also soul-taken. On top of all the other stuff.
Yeah, I completely forgotten that little nugget there. Speaking of nuggets. I'm like, wow, okay, yeah.
Boschelane strode towards the main house, humming under his breath. Buke twisted and gripped Reese's tunic. He said, "I can follow them now. Caruli's gift. I can follow those two anywhere." Reese said, "They'll kill you. They'll swat you down, Buke. You hood-damned idiot." Buke managed a sickly grin. He said, "Hood-damned? Oh yes, Mancy. We're all that, aren't we just? Hood-damned, aye." A distant, terrible roar interrupted them. A sound that shivered through the city, swept in from all sides. Reese paled. He said, "The Tenniscourie." But Buke's attention had been drawn to the main building's square tower, to the open shutters at the top, third floor's room, where two rooks now perched. He muttered, "Oh yes, I see you. You're going after him, aren't you? That first child of the dead seed, Anaster, you're going after him." The rooks dropped from the ledge, wings spreading, swooped low over the compound, then, with heavy audible flaps, lifted themselves clear of the compound wall, flying southeast. Buke pushed Reese away. He said, "I can follow them. Oh yes, Caruli's sweet gift." He thought, "My own soul-taken form, the shape of wings, the air sliding over and beneath me. Gods, the freedom. What I will finds form." He felt his body veering, sweet warmth filling his limbs, the spice of his skin's breath as it assumed a cloak of feathers, his body dwindling, changing shape, heavy bones thinning, becoming lighter. Buke thought, Caruli's sweet gift, more than he ever imagined. Flight! Away from what I was, from all that I had been, burdens vanishing. Oh, I can follow those two dread creatures, those winged nightmares. I can follow, and where they strain and lumber on the unseen currents in the sky, I twist, dart, race like lightning. Standing in the courtyard, Emancipor Reese watched through watering eyes Buke's transformation. A blurring of the man, a drawing inward, the air filling with pungent spice. He watched as the sparrow hawk that had been Buke shot upward in a cavorting, climbing spiral. Reese muttered, "Aye, you can fly circles around them. But, dear Buke, when they decide to swat you down, it won't be a duel on the wing. It'll be sorcery. Those plodding rooks have no need for speed, no need for agility, and those gifts will avail you nothing when the time comes. Buke, you poor fool." I wonder if Buke is now a soul-taken in truth or if something else is going on here.
That is a good question. I think it is the soul-taken just because, first off, he calls it that himself. But the number two, when it talks from Reese's standpoint, the blurring, the spicy smell, we have had that pointed out multiple times in this series that accompanies the soul taken when they veer. So I think it's a real soul taken.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So that begs the question, how did Caruli make something that would give Buke the ability to become a soul taken?
Good question.
Because I'm sure there's lots of people that would want to become a soul taken.
Oh, yeah.
And that knowledge seems very valuable.
Yeah, it seems valuable. It's also shown to be a madness, though. But no, that was the divers, wasn't it?
I think so.
We found that first empire. Was the divers an attempt to recreate soul taken amongst the humans, like an experiment gone wrong?
I thought it was both.
Okay.
I'm a little unclear on the specific issue that plagued that first empire.
Yeah.
Because we saw some of that frozen scenery when Felicin and Hebrick went under the city with Culp, and the bodies were all converted to limestone or something like that from the minerals in the water.
Yeah, he paints those pictures that make me, it makes you think you have answers, but it just leaves you with more questions.
Yep.
Answers. You're like, dude.
Part of the beauty of the series.
Yes, very much part of his beauty.
You actually want to learn more about it.
Yes.
High above Kapustan, the sparrowhawk circled. The two rooks, Boshlane and Korbal Broach, were far below yet perfectly visible to the raptor's eyes. Flapping ponderously through wreaths of smoke, southeast past the gate. The city still burned in places, thrusting columns of black smoke skyward. The sparrowhawk studied the siege from a point of view that the world's generals would die for, wheeling, circling, watching. The Tenniscourie ringed the city in a thick, seething band. 1/3 of a million, maybe more. Such a mass of people as Buke had never before seen. And the band had begun to constrict. A strangely colorless, writhing noose, drawing ever closer to the city's feeble, crumbled walls and what seemed to be a handful of defenders. There would be no stopping this assault. An army measured not by bravery, but by something far deadlier, something unopposable. Hunger. An army that could not afford to break, that saw only wasting death and retreat. Kapustan was about to be devoured. Buke thought, the Panyan Seer is a monster in truth, a tyranny of need, and this will spread. Defeat him, you will have to kill every man, woman, and child on this world who are bowed to hunger, everyone who faces starvation's grisly grin. It has begun here on Genebacus, but that is simply the heart. This tide will spread. It will infect every city on every continent. It will devour empires and nations from within. I see you now, Seer, from this height. I understand what you are and what you will become. We are lost. We are all truly lost. His thoughts were scattered by a virulent bloom of sorcery to the east. A knot of familiar magic swirled around a small section of the Tenniscourie army. Black waves shot through with sickly purple streamed outward, cut down screaming peasants by the hundreds. Gray streaming sorcery answered. Their magic must look so cool. Black waves with purple woven in would be really cool to see. It's different than everything else that we've heard of so far.
Yeah, that would be very cool to see. I agree.
The sparrowhawk's eyes saw the twin Corbies now, there in the midst of the magical storm. Demons burst from torn portals on the plain, tore mayhem through the shrieking, flinching ranks. Sorcery lashed back, swarmed over the creatures. The two rooks swept down, converging on a figure sitting on a bucking roan horse. Waves of magic collided with a midnight flash, the concussion a thunder that reached up to where Buke circled. The sparrowhawk's beak opened, loosing a piercing cry. The rooks had peeled away. Sorcery hammered them, battered them as they flapped in hasty retreat. The figure on the stamping horse was untouched, surrounded by heaps of bodies, into which fellow Tenniscourie now plunged, to feed. Buke screamed another triumphant cry, dipped his wings, plummeted earthward. He reached the estate's courtyard well ahead of Boshlane and Korbal Broach, spiraling, slowing, wings buffeting the air, to hover the briefest of moments before assembling, returning to his human form. Emancipor Reese was nowhere to be seen. The undead Erdomen still stood in their positions where they had first arisen. Feeling heavy and awkward in his body, Buke turned to study them. He said, 6 of you to the gate. You, he pointed, then said, and the ones directly behind you. And you to the northwest tower. He continued directing the silent warriors, placing them as Boshlane had suggested. As he barked the last order, twin shadows tracked weaving paths across the cobbles. The rooks landed in the courtyard. Their feathers were in tatters. Smoke rose from one of them. Buke watched the assembling, smiled at seeing first Korbal Broach, his armor in shreds, rank tendrils of smoke wreathed around him, then Boshlane, his pale face bruised along one side of his long jaw, blood crusting his mustache and staining his silver beard. Korbal Broach reached up to the collar of his cloak, his pudgy, soft hands trembling, fumbling at the clasp. The black leather fell to the ground. He began stamping on it to kill the last of the smoldering patches. Brushing dust from his arms, Boshlane glanced over at Buke and said, "Patient of you to await our return." Wiping the smile from his lips, Buke shrugged. He said, "You didn't get him. What happened?" Boshlane muttered, "It seems we must needs refine our tactics." The instinct of self-preservation vanished. Then, as Buke softly laughed, Boshlane froze, one eyebrow arched. Then he sighed and said, "Yes, well, good day to you too, Buke." Buke watched him head inside. Korbal Broach continued stomping on his cloak long after the smoldering patches had been extinguished. Boshlane is showing a large amount of patience with Buke here. Buke's outright laughing at his misfortune, and it's crazy.
Oh, yeah. Big time. He knows what he's up to, but it's like, I don't care, but, It's not going to stop anything, but, it's a shocking amount of patience that Balshain is showing these guys here, knowing that Buke is trying to stop them and still got them under our employ and just hey, they don't care. It's really strange having him around, keeping him around, I think, knowing that he's wanting to stop your plans.
Maybe they think it's all in good fun, or maybe he brings more value than he detracts.
That's got to be it. I'm thinking adds fun to their day. That's scary. It's that's what I'm thinking. It's it adds a little fun to their day. It's what are they going to do when they get tired of you?
The monotony is reduced a little bit. Adds some variability to it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
And thus the chapter ends. What a chapter, man.
Wow, good chapter. What a chapter.
For standout moments, hearing about Gruntle's exploits from the Greysword's messenger secondhand. It adds a legendary status to the whole tale.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic. And I love seeing this bit with Gruntle here where he is becoming a legend. I love it, dude. It's great.
Yeah, and Gruntle waking up the locals by showing them what will happen to their children if they don't stand up and fight for themselves, whether the child was real or not.
Dude.
I mean,
right, remains to be seen. But yes, it is. It's quite effective. Yes, and it is amazing. I love how he's got these people rallied up, dude. And let's just put it down to what it is. Whether the child is real or not is irrelevant. Through willpower, he's got these people rallied up in the middle of a situation where they're terrified. It's got them fighting and winning. They're holding their own. I'll put it like that.
Yeah. Gruntle continuing to push the limits of his followers and finding out that most of them are women after his quip about having their weapons sharp enough to shave with.
Great stuff, dude. Just really good levity there for a real heavy moment, too. Good stuff.
And it surprised me that Ikovian rode out to meet Gruntle personally, and seeing that he is in some way linked to Treach, that whole shocking nature of that revelation to him was interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes.
And Boshalane resurrecting enemies as bodyguards. That was horrific.
Dude, that is really, really horrific, twisted, and super smart, dude. But it's just that's just nasty, though, but I love it.
Yeah, strong. Real strong.
Yeah.
Finding out that Boshalane knew Buke was attempting to thwart Korbal Broach's exploits.
That is just too funny. Like we were just talking about there at the very end, it's just so funny how they just put up with it. It's we need this for amusement.
And then witnessing Boshalane and Korbal Broach's attempt to subdue Anaster amidst the Tenascauri through Buke's vantage point.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was really awesome. I just love the nerve that's I'm interested in this guy. We're just going to go check him out, We're interested in the head of the army of the opposing forces, and we're just going to go take him out.
We're going to go straight there. We're going to attack him and try to subdue him in the middle of 300,000 other people.
Yeah, fantastic, dude.
Yeah, quite the play there. And they got slapped around a little bit.
Yeah, they did, but they made it back, though.
They did, yeah.
They came back.
All right, great job tonight, Billy.
Hey, dude, great episode, man. I really enjoyed it.
You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
I just love seeing the siege having had started here 3 weeks ago when we started doing the coverage of the siege here. And I just love how this has gotten up, and Gruntle getting these people, getting his followers up there, that group of, was it the Grey Swords that went out and rescued that group at the Redoubt that was trapped out there?
Mm-hmm.
There's some truly epic stuff, man. Just true heroism. And you're like me, because we're reading a good war story, but what makes it even better is some good heroism.
Oh, yeah.
And boy, that's just some epic stuff. Yeah. Amazing.
I love seeing people live up to their potential.
Yeah.
And Gruntle obviously was not when he was drinking himself to death.
Yes.
But unfortunately, it took something happening to someone very close to him to wake him up and get him moving in the right direction in order to really reach his potential.
Good stuff, though.
Oh, yeah, definitely. All right, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
We'll see y'all next week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.